Nice to meet you all. I'm Barbara Koene, Business Development and Marketing Director at Altamimi & Company. And I would like to welcome you to our virtual Managing Partners Forum. I will soon hand over to Samer, but before I do this, I wanted to address the following guidelines by way of housekeeping. As a default, everyone will be on mute, but you can keep your cameras on and you can unmute yourself if you would like to speak. We will use poll questions and ask you to answer these within 30 seconds. The way that works is that a separate screen will pop up with the poll question and you can simply click on the answers of your choice. Multiple answers are allowed and then hit the submit button. After 30 seconds, the poll will be completed and results will be shared with you on the screen. After each poll question, one of you will be invited to share your views. And we aim to make sure that everyone will speak during the forum. But if we can't do this through the poll questions, we do have an open dialogue at the end of the poll session and invite those who haven't been able to share their views to speak then. We will also be very happy to set up a separate call to discuss any points you wanted to make, but that you couldn't make during this forum because of time constraints, so that we ensure that we take all your views on board. So do reach out to me or my colleague Joanna if you want to discuss this. Also, please note that timing will be strict. So if you want to contribute to a poll question, you can raise your hand and we will try to allow for speaking time, but only if the time permits. I will be a strict timekeeper, so apologies in advance for having to jump in to stop the conversation, as we may need to move on to the next discussion point, just to make sure that we go through everything. We will have a 10-minute time break at 3 o'clock to recharge. This is 3 o'clock our time, so this is in about an hour time. To recharge, and we ask you all to get back in on time. Please also note that this meeting will be recorded and we will send you the link after the event. So now the boring part is over and done with. Thank you very much for your attention. And it is my pleasure to hand over now to Samer for a far more interesting conversation. Enjoy and have fun.
Thank you, Barbara. Well, if I summarize, our 7th Managing Partner Forum 2020. It's good to see you all, albeit virtually. We were not able to meet physically this year. Like Sam said, it's a very strange year for all of us. The pandemic had restricted our movement, but I'm very delighted to see you, and I was very keen that we meet up virtually this year. We highly value the friendships that we've developed over the years, and we're very, very keen to actually develop this year after year. This must have been a very hard year for all of us, and to me in particular, having taken over as the managing partner this year, one thing Hussam forgotten to mention to me when he handed over, that the whole world would collapse this year. But I'm glad that we're still talking, we're still operating, and we're still looking forward for our future. Obviously, the theme of this forum is the COVID-19 and generally the impact of it on operating models for law firms. But the idea here is not to discuss how we reacted to the COVID-19. This is behind our backs. What I would suggest that we do is actually discuss its impact on our future. And this is where I would like the focus to be. We will be raising some questions, all related on the impact on our future. We will be asking questions about the workplace, the remote working, and whether or not you will be considering a redesign of your office. We will be asking about the client expectations moving forward. Would there be any impact on the service delivery, technology, obviously, and the investment in technology, and where our priority lies when it comes to investing in technology? We will be examining the future of the legal profession in light of what we've lived this year. And we will conclude with some thoughts on the new areas that may have emerged out of the COVID-19. I'm sure every one of you have attended webinars and read articles and reports about this topic. These are very hot topics these days, and we don't necessarily have to agree on which approach we take in relation to these topics, but I'd like to more debate those and try to conclude what the desired outcome might be. I personally believe in a tailor-made solution. I do like to see us as a unique firm, and I'm not in favor of taking things as granted. So the fact that someone has done it this way doesn't mean that it's the right way. And I would like to debate that with you as well. There are obviously, out of the webinars and seminars and the articles and the report that we've heard, there are two schools of thoughts, if I may summarize them, two extremes. One is the sky is falling extreme, as I like to call it, and the other one is the business as usual, but not in more in the ignorant way rather than in the mindful way. And it's not important for us, again, to adopt either of these extremes, but I do genuinely believe that we should be prepared to jump ship and implement whatever necessary changes to address either of these extremes. And one area that I would want to examine with you is whether or not there is a one-size-fits-all. And by that, I'd like to compare law firms with businesses in general and see whether we should take the Google and Microsoft of the world approach, or there are law firm specific approaches that we should consider. And again, I mean, this is a beautiful diversity that we have in terms of jurisdictions and cultures. One thing I want to debate with you is there a jurisdictional and cultural consideration that we need to take into account? Some of you are operating in different regions. We operate in 9 countries. And I can tell you that our experience had shown that there is no one size fits all. We are mindful of the cultural differences and we're taking those on board. Also, in your answer to the questions, if you could take into account cost cutting versus efficiency, are we just cutting costs for the sake of increasing our profitability, or we're basically doing that because we want to become more efficient? And I would like to examine the association between cost and people. Is it always true that when we terminate people, we'll become more profitable? The same applies for technology. Do we take a conservative approach on investing in technology because that will be additional cost that we will be bearing, or we look at it as a new tool that would result in making us more efficient and more profitable? And then the reactive and proactive approach. The reactive approach is the cost cutting that we all had to do during the pandemic. But then the proactive approach is whether or not we should be considering investing in people, and be it in terms of training and developments for our people, or hiring the right people, or investing in technology, because as I said, this might be the way forward, the way that would enable us to be more efficient in what we do. And then we need to decide on where our priorities lies. I'm very mindful of the time limitations, so I'm very keen to hear your various views on these topics. So I'm gonna hand over to Hussein Hadi, Head of Middle East Publishing at LexisNexis, and if you allow me to thank him on your behalf in anticipation for agreeing to moderate that session for us. Hussein?
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Assam, Samer, Barbara, Joanna, and the El Tamimi team for hosting the Managing Partners Forum. As Samer said, we're very much looking towards the future beyond COVID-19. So if we're talking about the future, the first port of call is, what will 2021 look like? That is just around the corner. You hear people say, what is the new normal? Well, we have some idea about how people expect the new normal to look like. Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, said last week, my prediction would be that over 50% of business travel and over 30% of days in the office will go away. Now you have to take that with a pinch of salt. After all, Bill Gates is the founder of Microsoft. Microsoft Teams is doing very well. Zoom is doing very well. But if you look at what law firms are doing, some law firms have changed their long-term global policy to reflect a more flexible way of working. If you look at Linklaters has said that from 2021, 20 to 50% of employee time will be spent working from home. Other law firms have taken a more cautious approach, suggesting that it'll be slightly more flexible policies, but mostly coming back to the office. In a speech in September, Lord Jonathan Sumption, the former Justice of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, warned of the dangers of going towards a digital workplace. He warned that we should not underestimate the hole that will be left in people's lives if this aspect of work disappears. Distance contact through a computer screen isolates us in silos. It rules out accidental encounters. It prevents junior members from meeting and networking with others. So with that, we have differing ideas as to what the new normal will look like in 2021. Richard Susskind talked about a 5-stage recovery for law firms from COVID-19. We are in, he says, phase 3, the emergence phase. So, on how you're going to be managing your team in 2021. So the first question we'd like to ask you all is, and it will appear on your screen shortly, from 2021, will you consider working from home as an option? And if yes, to what extent will that be the case? Related to that question, what is your reason for choosing either of the answers in question 1? As Samer said, what is your motivation for adapting your workplace practice? Are we going towards the Linklaters approach, 25 to 50% of time, or do most people anticipate coming back to the office in the wake of a new vaccine and the expectation that we will get back to normal in the future? And after the results are revealed, I'll invite 2 of the people in this meeting to share their thoughts. So we'll have 10 seconds left. All right, we'll be closing the poll. It'll be very interesting to see, since we have a multiple jurisdictional presentation here. Now, very interesting. 92% are saying yes, we will consider working from home, but only 25% of our time. That's an overwhelming answer. For the most part, people expect to be going back to normal with some element of working from home. I'd like to invite Rodney McKean, the director of Anjarwala & Khanna from Kenya, to share his thoughts on the results and talk about how he's approaching this with his firm.
Thanks, Hussein. I think our view is driven very much by a combination of a number of factors, and I'm sure it's probably very similar to what everyone else is thinking. I think we are very cognizant of our staff's concerns about coming back into the office for health reasons and have taken a fairly flexible approach to that. So although we have a rota system for people to come into the office, for those, we've left it entirely up to people on a voluntary basis as to whether to come in or not. And I think what we've seen over this last year is that there are benefits to working in home, not just from a health point of view, just efficiency and productivity. It seems the feedback we've had from a lot of our lawyers in particular that it gives them a lot more time, both in terms of doing their legal work, but also kind of time with their families, etc., which has obvious benefits. I think there are obviously challenges for, and I'm sure we all have this with certain categories of admin staff or certain practice areas where they feel they need to be in the office. I head up our corporate commercial team, and we've taken a very different view where we feel that we don't need to be in the office to be able to run our transactions. I think other practices have a different view. So I think coming back to your question, I mean, I think, and the second point of the second leg of the question was, why do we think that we'll be working from home more? I think it's not about reducing costs. It's about recognizing that life has changed. That I mean, for us, because we're sitting in Africa, a lot of our clients are not traveling to us, and a lot of our clients are saying to us they're quite happy with dealing with us on a virtual basis, and therefore, if our lawyers are sitting in the office or at home, frankly, it doesn't really make a huge amount of difference. I think and just to finish off, perhaps to say that I think we do feel that we're not in favor of adopting a work from home policy completely, because we feel that the social interaction, which is part of the way we operate as a law firm, would be missing, and that we would prefer that we try to retain some form of physical social interaction on an ongoing basis.
Thank you very much, Roddy. And I can confirm a trend that we're seeing. Barbara was kind enough to share a survey that the Lawyer magazine conducted in September. 84% of lawyers surveyed would prefer coming to the office at least 1 day a week, and most people preferred 2 to 3 days per week. Now, in terms of the appetite for coming to the office, it differed. Partners and junior associates were more likely to want to have that office interaction. Mid-level associates were probably more likely to want more flexible working, but universally, there was, as you mentioned, a wish to maintain that social side, that opportunity for mentorship, to share and exchange ideas. Thank you for that. Can we get another perspective? If I can ask James Whitaker from the executive leadership team at Corrs Chambers in Australia to share his thoughts.
Thanks, Hussein. Look, I share Roddy's view, and I think that's our lived experience as well. We've been very fortunate in Australia in the sense that the pandemic, although it hit our shores fairly early on, has not been nearly as dramatic in its impact as it has been in other parts of the world. Notwithstanding that, we did have lockdowns in each of the major cities that we operate in, and indeed, as I was explaining to Samir earlier, we've only just reached a point where one of our major offices in Melbourne has been permitted to reopen, so government mandated closure up until today. That said, I think the reality is that, at least from our firm's perspective, we were already heading into a very flexible workplace, and that had been an evolution underway for a significant period of time. So there was permission for people to work from home or to work flexibly if they wish to. What the pandemic has done is actually provide the excuse that people wanted in order to take advantage of the permission. And that probably is the biggest shift. So there's been an organic shift and a shift in the psyche of the workforce. And we were extremely lucky in the sense that our technological response from the firm had been tested about a month before shutdown occurred. So we were ready to run. Productivity's in fact improved quite significantly, which was obviously one of the great concerns that we had initially. And indeed, the productivity in the firm is at record levels and has been throughout the pandemic. And just last month, we had our highest productivity in the firm's history. So the impact has not been enormously significant in terms of productivity and workflow. However, where there has been a real impact, and I think it's one which is troubling and we need to address fairly urgently, is that the apprenticeship model is starting to break down. And that is a really critical part of what we need to make good our promise to the junior lawyers who join us, that we will look after their training and education. Their professional development will be something that we hold dear, and at the end of their journey with us, whenever that might be, they will emerge with a cause brand all over them that holds them in good stead for whatever they wish to do in their lives. That is starting to fall apart. And it is only through very, very active involvement of the partner and senior lawyer cohort that we're able to arrest that. And with the demands of work and the increase in productivity, because there in fact is more work to be done, that is starting to become a worrying trend. I tick the box for 25% because I think that's where we'll be as well. We won't have mandate for everyone needing to be back in the office or for rotation or anything of that nature. People will be very much encouraged to use common sense and to come back to the office as they need to. Our lived experience is that in a couple of the offices where there has not been much of a lockdown at all, we're running at about 65 to 80% return to office on any particular day. So the 25% actually has intervention that we need to make in relation to the younger lawyers is something that will cause us to move back to a higher percentage over the course of the next 6 months.
Thank you very much, James. So there is a consensus here, 25% in the office. We're looking towards efficiency, productivity gains, but a wise warning from James about the need for mentorship, apprenticeship, which leads us on to our third question we'd like to get your opinion on. In light of this change, are you planning to make any changes to your office space? So are you planning on downsizing the office space? So the next question is, are you planning to make any changes? Yes, cancellation of lease or parts of the office space. B, relocation to smaller other offices, or simply a redesign to account perhaps for social distancing or a new way of working? Or do you anticipate there will be no changes to the office? So you have 15 more seconds to answer this question. And once we have the results, can I invite Antonio Baena, partner and head of international at Quatre Casas, Spain, to share his thoughts on this? So we expect yes, and we are planning on seeing some changes, a redesign of office space, 62%. So for the most part, we're not seeing a fundamental change. So Antonio, could you share your thoughts on this? Is it what you expected?
Yes, with pleasure. In my case, I answered no, but I was in two minds about no and a redesign. I didn't because I also, in the previous round, I said that only 25% or less of the people at our firm will be affected by on a daily basis about this new way of working. And hence, I believe that at least initially, will not be making any amendments the way we are set up. Having said that, it is also true that we pretty recently redesigned because of a move our main office, trying to readapt to the new times. I think that at the outset, it will be a wait and see stage. Eventually, we may end at C. For some of us, already may have identified this need of redesigning, but not for us. Not for us. But to me, it's the corollary of the fact that only a part of our employees will be working from home. And I'm coming back to the earlier question, will be the young generations. And also I think that there is a great opportunity to enhance the diversity of our firms, no? And to give them this flexibility that some part of our workforce are demanding for a long time. But in practical terms, for the time being, we will stay as we are.
All right. Now, this is a very interesting point. What do we actually mean by a redesign of the office? I mean, this is something that the majority of people spoke about. Are we talking about collaboration zones, being more efficient, focus on training? Can I invite someone else to share their thoughts on this? Can I perhaps bring Warren to share his thoughts? Perhaps what would a redesign look like? What are we talking about potentially?
Well, thank you, Hussein. Actually, my answer to this question was also no, like Antonio. I didn't choose redesign of the office space. My answer to this question is also connected to my question to the first question, because on our side, we will definitely maintain our old working style and to require all the employees to work from the office. And the reason for doing that is because of the concept of having a good social connection among people in the Chinese culture. And it is true that when people are working from home, the productivity can be improved, and the efficiency may also be improved because, for example, for people who are working in big cities like in Beijing or in Shanghai or Guangzhou or Shenzhen, we spend a lot of hours every day on commuting. Like in my case, I spend 2.5 hours every day, going to the office and returning to the home. And when we are working from home, you can take advantage of all these time to work on billable matters. But at the same time, we find it quite difficult for us to monitor the work of our employees, and you don't know whether your employees are making improvements on a daily basis. And this is also something like the mentorship or apprenticeship that the other participants mentioned just now. And we do believe it is necessary for us to work on a face-to-face environment so as to create the bond between people. And this is the reason why we restore the normal office operation once the government left up the social distance and ban in China. So we were back to normal operations since the 1st of May. And we will keep expanding our office. Like in this month, we just signed a lease agreement in our headquarters to expand our office space for another 2,000 square meters. Yeah, so sorry, I did not choose redesign of our office space.
If Barbara will permit me, can I have a show of hands, everyone who talked about redesigning the office? Show of hands of the 60%. I might bring you back in, James, to very, very quickly talk about that point, if you wouldn't mind.
Partly it's accidental because our lease is running out in Sydney and we're going to move. But being less flippant, we've been on a journey for some time now of operating in an open plan environment, and we moved to open plan 7 years ago, I would think. And we progressively rolled it out in our different offices. My own view, and I think it's now shared by the executive leadership team of the firm, is that it's not been a success. And so in our new premises, we'll be probably moving to a hybrid. We're still working our way through that because it's under construction and the plans are still being drawn up. But most likely we'll have a hybrid, which will be based upon feedback from the lawyers about what makes sense for the types of work that they're doing, the relationships they have within the office, whether they're transactional, litigation-based, etc. All of that's going to be taken into account. And the reality also is that the pandemic has raised health and safety issues, which are going to also impact on the way in which we work. And all of that's being taken into account as part of that process. There are some, just quickly, there is a recent Harvard Business School study on professional services offices, and the early adopters of open plan offices have almost universally now moved back to at least a hybrid, if not to a traditional office.
Thank you very much, James. Let's move on to, this is definitely an interesting topic which can be explored further, but let's move on to the next one where we talk about our clients' needs and will that change in the future? So you're going to be asked 2 questions. Will client requirements change in the future? And how will you interact with clients in the future? So it's an important question. While you're answering that, I might refer you to the Association of Corporate Counsel, which represents 50,000 in-house lawyers worldwide. They have an annual Chief Legal Officers survey. In the 2020 survey that came out, the most cited challenge for in-house lawyers going forward, no surprise, compliance, more regulatory requirements, data protection, cybersecurity. These are expected to be the key challenges moving forward. 1/3 of chief legal officers expect to be giving more work to their external counsel going forward. So that gives you an indication. If you haven't had a chance to read that report from the Association of Corporate Counsel, I would recommend that. It certainly also highlights some of the challenges in-house lawyers worldwide are facing today when it comes to supply chain management, employment issues, restructuring, cash flow, etc. But our question here today is, will client requirements change in the future? And how will you interact with your clients in the future? So it'll be very interesting to see how you've answered those questions. All right. Interesting. So let's tackle the first question first. So will client requirements change in the future? 75% yes, clients are more focused on price and demand more creative fee arrangements. 63% clients require more interaction with our lawyers and expect more added value. Can I bring in Vittorio Noceda, equity partner, NCTM, to bring an Italian perspective on the first question, please?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I think that I'm not sure that we'll be able to drive, because basically those who are driving are the clients. And so I think that we should basically adapt to whatever the client's requirements will be. We noticed that clients at the beginning, over time, they adapted to virtual meetings. And this, I guess, will remain the case in the future. But clearly, also in respect of fee arrangements, it is a clear trend that the clients are asking us to consider more creative fee arrangements over the time. And the price of the real estate will no doubt have an effect on this in the future, because clearly whoever will be able to decrease the cost of its own real in a range between 7 and 10% of total revenues will definitely be able to be proactive with clients in terms of pricing. So our own choices in terms of our own real estate structuring will have an impact on our ability to service the clients at different cost levels, which ultimately will impact on the competition scenario.
Thank you, Vittorio. You cut out there towards the end. Thank you very much. I might bring in Lucas, the managing partner from Kinsella Emerging Europe, Turkey, and Central Asia, to share his perspective on that question of client engagement, please.
Yeah, first of all, welcome to everyone, and you will recognize that it's not Jason here who should be sitting here. I'm sitting on his behalf, and I'm managing the Prague office. I've been a partner with Linklaters together with Jason before. 12 years ago, we formed Kinsella, and I'm managing the Prague office since, and have been part of our firm management committee. So Jason sends his greetings to you all, and I'm sitting here instead of him because he has some unfortunate other urgent business. Hussein, back to your question. I think the client. I think we need to distinguish between sort of two different clients there. There will be clients who will definitely be falling into the first category, and based on the circumstances which they experience in their business, they will be very focused on cutting some cost wherever that is possible, and that will include legal services as well. And on the other hand, I'm quite confident that there are some parts of our advisory and transactional work which will sustain, and where actually there will be bigger demand for qualified and value-added services, and they are probably less under the danger of having to undergo big cost cuts. So I think one really needs to distinguish between different clients and actually even within clients for different work streams and practices. So I think it will be a mixed bag.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Would anyone like to comment on the results of that first question? If anyone would like to add a few words to that. Thierry, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, what we did last year, we did an intensive survey, which was done by McKinsey, and we audited our firm, and in particular on that aspect, to see what the future would be and what our clients would request from us. And as you don't know, but we are a mixed civil law and a tax law firm. And in particular in the tax field, there is a lot of uncertainty what the future of the tax advisors will be. So that's why we did a huge survey on that. And what we saw is that we believe that the request from our clients will certainly change. Of course, they first ask that you have top technical skills, so that will remain. But what we see more and more is that people are requesting that the clients are requesting that you participate to the project, to the design of the project. So that means that they consider you more as a partner in the transaction, and not only as the person who has to respond to questions. So you have to participate, and that's not only for transactional work, but also for more advising work. This was an issue which came up out of a lot of interviews we had with the partners. And of course, this also has an impact on the fees. Of course, the costs, they want to cut the cost, that's for sure. The budgets are reducing a lot. And that means also that they will do in-house more and more the commodity work. So we are getting less and less commodity work, but we have more and more, we hope, with high-level work, but then in a kind of a partnership. And then they will ask kind of fixed fees, so that that makes the situation a bit more difficult. And another issue, and then I will stop, is that we are not only confronted with the requests of the clients, but also we are, I suppose this is in the rest of the world the same, but in Europe this is a really nightmare, is that we are confronted with a huge amount of increasing compliance requirements. And that makes also that it has a disadvantage, is that you cannot accept all the clients, but also that means that in preparation of the work, of engagement letters and so on, you will have to discuss more in detail what the job description will be, not only because it's necessary for the client relationship, but also because you need to report on the compliance issues.
Thank you very much, Thierry. So it's not just about clients wanting cheaper services and creative fee arrangements. It's a very strong focus on higher added value, more interaction to achieve that higher value. As for the second question, you can see the result very much ties in with the first questions about the importance of the office and the importance of that face-to-face engagement in the future. So if we're talking about being more efficient, it leads us on to our next topic, which is technology. Legal technology has been hyped very much at conferences for the last 5, if not 10 years. People are investing in legal technology, but to what extent is this something that is revolutionizing the practice of law? What technologies are we investing in? Is it an overhyped phenomenon, or is it something that's going to change the legal practice? So I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Are you planning to invest in legal technology, and why? And if you were to invest in technology, which of these technologies would you be most interested in investing in? So this is a very interesting take. What's driving the decision to invest in technology, and what is the type of technology you are investing in? While you're doing that, I can share with you some findings from the International Bar Association Law Firm Management Committee. They asked a series of lawyers, what are the most mentioned challenges when it comes to using legal technology? The first, number 1, is understanding the opportunities, separating hype from reality, the cost of acquiring new technology. But for the most part, most law firms see technology as a way to drive efficiency. These were the findings. A recent survey in Singapore asked in-house lawyers, what technology would you like to see your law firms adopt? Now, this was interesting. I'll reveal the answer after we get the results. Okay. 100%. Are you planning to invest in legal technology, and why? Yes, to drive efficiency. That's very clear. And then 50% yes, because of client expectations. Very interesting. And of course, the second one, we've got a very interesting look at the different things there. So in terms of the drive towards technology, I think there's a clear consensus here. But I'd like to bring in Warren to give his thoughts on the drive for efficiency. How is your firm approaching this? How are you taking the approach of deciding what technology to go for?
Well, for the time being, we are actually not using any technology yet to improve efficiency on the legal work side. We have developed a number of softwares to improve the efficiency on the law firm management on marketing efforts. For example, we have developed our own CRM, client relationship management platform, but it's not really a traditional CRM. It is some uniform platform for all marketing works. So it has bundled administrative work such as client database, marketing expenses control, and deal announcements, track record collection, marketing events organization. All these functions are bundled into one single platform, which is very useful and has been proving to be quite efficient. And this year we have the target to set up our full-time KM team, which will be led by a partner. And so our target is to establish our KM system based on, again, a self-developed software.
Thank you very much, Warren. Can I bring Julian into the discussion, the managing partner of A&L Goodbody in Ireland, to share his perspective?
Sure. I guess we had, for the last number of years, been really trying to focus on how we could bring efficiency, profitability, and better ways of doing things. So we had developed a legal project management team, a data interrogation team, and a client technology team. Actually, we found the last 6 or 7 months has been a real kick for us to drive that on and accelerate, because it was interesting. I was reading a Harvard review of S&P CEOs, and they had said on average their digitization had been accelerated by 3 years. I brought that back to our executive management team and said, well, if that's what they are doing, there's going to be a huge degree of expectation on us and how we both use digital technology and how we engage. So for us, we've started a kind of a bit of a plan to rebalance around our knowledge, project management skills, our data interrogation, and effectively what we're calling service delivery people. At the start of the year, we picked 3 different projects. One was a product off the back of the change in law, which we have effectively gone into some of our large banking clients and are building a system for them to manage senior executive accountability. The second was a practice area that we saw huge revenue growth in, and that was in investigations, as to how we approach investigations with people, process, and technology. And the last was an area that we looked in our business where we wanted to drive more profitable return, and it was a pure efficiency play, and that was in our aviation leasing practice. So from our perspective, when I look down through the list, I think every single one of those are areas that we can all drive forward. Cybersecurity, I think, is the one that we should all be very aware of, and probably, if you're like me, worry that you don't know enough about, because I think that's where we could find ourselves in difficulty.
Thank you very much, Julian. Would anyone else like to comment, or perhaps is surprised by any of the results when it comes to the technology adoption there? Would anyone else like to raise their hand and comment? Perhaps Essam would like to share his thoughts?
Thank you very much, Hussein, and hi to everyone. Believe it or not, and talking about technology and being in the office environment, I'm actually walking on a treadmill, so I'll show you all of you what I'm doing. And I'm gonna pause it for a second, and then continue with all of you. Sometime when I basically do Zoom, I took an advantage of sitting on a treadmill while I'm doing my Zoom on a desk treadmill. When it comes to technology, and that's my big concern, and we have invested in CRM, in a state-of-the-art IT system, a lot of money. If I give you the figures, it's actually alarming how much we spent over the last 2 years in our IT system. However, everything we spend is from the experience of the past. We have not spent much in trying to embrace the future. Now, because of COVID, and you all may know, some of us has contributed to a study that we have done a few years back to try to see how technology is going to affect our law firms. And we brought in a consultants to give us a report on how things are going to change. And I think knowing what's happening today as a result of COVID, we have learned things that we could do simply, effective, reducing costs on clients, and can connect to the clients without having to leave the office or the client leave the office, where we could bring the cost down, as well as basically probably provide the same service, similar to what we are doing today remotely over Zoom or Team. And we have learned to do things in a simple way, effective way, reducing costs on the clients. And the true fact of the matter, the service is as good. When it comes to reviewing documents, dealing with this, I sit on arbitration cases, and they basically runs extremely effective online, and the clients benefit from having not to travel, get people to travel and sit in a hotel and reserve a conference room or dealing with all this logistics. However, in some way, we've been watching a lot as a law firm. We've been trying to see what's happening elsewhere, what technology is going to change, whether it's going to be as simple as Zoom, Team, an app to communicate with the clients and get the clients to look at their file, or it's going to be basically much bigger than this, where we have to utilize artificial intelligence and documentation and automating some documents and move on. Naturally, from what we just said, working from home with a 25% capacity, and we are trying to push toward that because we believe that's efficiency. It will have to embrace a better technology, a faster way of dealing things, and accessibility, and which I don't see a lot of articles discussing this, confidentiality. You know, with 25% people working from different environments, different accessibility, some of my concern and even and responsibility toward confidentiality to the clients and having to monitor this system very well to ensure that the clients get the confidentiality and the secrets they were hoping on. My points, however, is probably three. One, we are investing in technology, but our investments probably all coming from the past experience. We are watching the future and trying to assess where to invest. But generally, as all law firm, including the fact that we were profitable during this period and we were reaching our targets, because we're all trading on the past. We're trading on our past clients, we're trading on our past accounts, we're trading on our past marketing efforts, and the future gonna teach us a lot of different things, in my opinion. We may have to work harder to retain those clients in the future. We may have to change our style in the future, and we may have to do different things, and we may have to bring younger people on board. And therefore, we may have to bring different technology to help us in having to service the clients in the future, including the costs issue. I'm actually very impressed, and maybe we should learn from the medical industry. I actually think the medical industry has done wonderfully in trying to adopt technology, not only in the document management, not only in basically accounts, not only in billing, not only in the CRM, but in actual service, the way they service clients. And I think law firm has not got to that yet. And I'm hoping, as part of my agenda and Samer's agenda in the future, to be able to utilize the clients and trying to become more efficient and to be able to utilize those technology to service the clients better in terms of quality, cost, and connectivity.
Thank you very much, Essam. Just as a quick comment, if you look down the list of the technologies that people have said that they plan on investing in, most of that ties in with global research. Legal document automation in the last IBA survey of technologies adopted by law firms around the world did come up. 90% of larger law firms are investing in that, 65% of smaller law firms. The only thing surprising from this list is the client engagement portal intranet. That is seen as a relatively quick win, low tech that a lot of people are moving towards. And I'm surprising that we have a smaller percentage here. When Singapore in-house lawyers were asked, what legal technology do you want your law firms to invest in? The number one was document automation. Number two was client intranet. So that's the only legal tech mentioned here that surprisingly might be a little lower than expected. But exactly like Essam said, this is we need to think beyond the past and what does the future look like. So let's move on to our next topic before the break. With Barbara's permission, we might have the break at 3:05 rather than 3 o'clock. So the next question I'd like to ask you all, which of the following will have your priority in future with the aim to grow the firm? So what is your priority in terms of future growth? Is it the increase of fee earners? Is it investing in training and development? Is it using technology, as we've said? Or is it more about being more efficient with cost reduction measures? So where do you all see as key priority in the future to keep your firm competitive in a very fast-moving and dynamic legal marketplace? And while we're waiting for the results, I'd like to bring in Ashish Razdan, the partner, Ketan & Co from India, to comment when the results come up and to share his experience in India. If I could ask Ashish Razdan from India to share his thoughts. Let's see what the results hold. I'm very curious about this one in particular. That is really heartwarming to see. Training and development 71%. That's really good to see. So Ashish, can I ask you to share your thoughts on the results and your approach in India?
Definitely. Thanks, Hussain. I think from our perspective in India, we are still very much a growth market. I think the size of our legal teams, we expect it pretty much be on a growth trajectory for the coming few years. And that's purely driven by the need of the market of having more service providers available to them of a particular quality and a particular standard of training, and which is why the emphasis on training and development. I think even during the lockdown, what we've tried to do, and something our learning and development team delivered on brilliantly, was making sure that even if remotely, we are consistently running training sessions for different associates across levels, whether they are mid-level, people who've just joined the firm. We in fact had a virtual induction 2-day session for all our new joinees. We ran it all virtually. Everything was organized, in advance. We had their sort of IT equipment and everything, shipped over to them at their residences because we were still in lockdown. And from there on, it was all done virtually. So I think that's really key. And I think, one of the other panelists had mentioned this earlier as well, that people expect a particular standard of service, and which means that even in times of the crisis, you still need to be able to train them to deliver at least a glimpse of, what it is like to have our firm represented, what do we stand for, what is our culture, and all of that can only be conveyed effectively by investing in training and development. I think on cost reduction, just a point I had from the earlier discussion was that while we did use this opportunity to rationalize costs in many ways, I think, let's say business development expenses, travel, I think we looked at a lot of the numbers and we could see ways in which we could, trim that down. But again, in the longer term, I think the focus is more on growth rather than, relying on cost reduction measures to drive the performance of the firm.
Thank you very much, Ashish. Very interesting to hear about the virtual induction and how you've managed to go with and adapt to COVID. Now, obviously, most of you have said training and development. I would like to get some other views. Can I have a raise of hands who chose increase of fee earners? That's a very positive message in this climate, to be actually bringing more fee earners. So can I ask Lucas to comment on this, please?
Yeah, I think priority, if one talks about, it depends on the markets. We are in small markets where sort of the office size of 40 lawyers for the type of business which we are trying to attract. But still, obviously, if you want to get a larger market share there, I think you will probably need to either develop certain practice areas which you have not been offering to that extent so far. You will need to bring some expertise and even clients, obviously, team who have some client relationships. So I think increasing the fee earners is definitely a means how to efficiently increase the growth of the firm.
Lucas, in your market, what would you say are the top 2 practice areas where you see growth potential that you'd want more people? What would be the top 2?
I think it's regulated industries, certainly where you have a lot of compliance and other regulations to deal with. So starting from the energy, life sciences sectors, definitely increasingly environmental issues coming up and needs to be taken care of also from the legal perspective. But I would very much hope that at least as of probably the second quarter next year, also M&A transactional activity, which is sort of my practice, that also picks up in a more normal sense, and we don't see only sort of the distressed transactions coming to the table. So yeah, I think that is on a broad front. Actually, there will be increased demand with the sophistication of the legal environment, and yeah, I think. But those regulated industries and transactions.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Can I see who chose technology as their priority? Who'd like to add? Would anyone like to add to that discussion? Julian, perhaps.
I actually chose a combination of them. I think the couple of things that jump out at me: big picture stuff. Governments have all issued a lot of debt, got to recover revenue. I think we can anticipate tax disputes, and particularly that'll be an overlay across the OECD focus. on multinationals. I think there's some very interesting revenue streams coming down the track there. Aligned into that, if you look at, again, a more macro issue around ESG or broader sustainability, I think you're going to see organizations being forced again by governments to change what they're doing. So increased regulation. And again, if you look at stuff like data or the banking sector, we know increased regulation means enforcement. So that's the kind of the flow through into revenue opportunities there. On the tech side, I think I've talked a bunch of the things that we are doing there, but I think for us, we're very focused on people, process, and technology in that combination. And so we'll see an increase in fee earners, but not necessarily the lawyer fee earner, but the service delivery and other fee earners, for example, project managers who we're selling out at an hourly rate, which are actually more profitable than some of our lawyers. So I think there's some interesting combinations there.
Thank you very much. Samer, I might get your opinion on this because we interviewed you recently for the UAE Managing Partner Report. You were talking about opportunistic M&A, restructuring, and helping clients with digital transformation. Perhaps you could talk about the opportunities you see in the future.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I'm one of the people who chose training and development. And to me, this is basically a broader issue that cuts across all the other topics that we've discussed. Now we're moving to a new world where you will have some challenges in having people work remotely and support clients remotely. And obviously, what you need to have is you need to ensure the engagement of your team, and hence becomes the development part. You need to ensure that they are upskilled to deliver the services in the new way of delivering the service. You need to ensure that they're upskilled to also understand the new technology that you're using. And more than anything, in fact, is the values. You need to ensure that they very much understand the firm values and very much committed to their your values. This would automatically reflect on efficiency and productivity, which are basically the main key drivers for profitability in my view.
Thank you very much, Samer. Would anyone like to add a final comment before we go into the break on that? Thierry, please.
Sorry. Yeah, just two things. First thing is that we will not increase the number of fee earners, we will decrease the number of fee earners, of course, and we are convinced that this will not prevent the growth. This is because we have a very high leverage. We have 1 to 7, and one of our concerns is also the control of quality. And because if you have too high leverage, then you have an issue with the risk of quality control. And then the second thing about training and development, of course, this is one of the most important things, but what we have encountered the last years is that we have very good programs for associates, but what we miss, and we are working on that, is a partner also, assessment and partner development, because we have a lot of young partners, which is a very good thing, but to become a partner is one thing, but then to stay as a partner and to well, be ready to deal with the pressure of the future. That's why we are now investing a lot of efforts to train and develop our new partners. That's something we didn't do in the past.
Thank you very much, Thierry. Antonio, I think let's squeeze you in quickly before the break. Good to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, and very quickly. Now, I was going to say that another driver of growth is pricing, and I wanted to make the point that we all must be sensitive to this, moving towards areas where we can sustain and increase pricing, that is value-added services, possibly leave behind, I want to say, well, perhaps on the one hand, clients that are not profitable, but on the other, and in particular, practices or activities that are dragging the price that we are able to sell. And I think there is a lot of pressure in terms of pricing, and we have to be smart about handling that. And the other point was that growing in terms of employees might be aligned with the idea of growing to other territories or areas different from what we all have right now. So it could be the case that the growth comes from exploring other geographies different from the ones that we all have in mind.
Well, it's really good to see a very positive outlook for the future. And I think that will serve us well after the break when we talk about the future of the legal profession. So with Samer and Barbara's permission, I suggest we take an 8-minute break and come back at 3:15 UAE time, if that works.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
All right, see you all back in 8 minutes. Grab your tea and coffee and we'll talk about the future from that. Thank you. All right, I think we will be ready to make a start. I hope you've got your teas and coffees. Welcome back. All right, we'll be talking about the future of the legal profession. So the next question that we would appreciate your answers are, taking your culture and jurisdiction into account, do you foresee a change to the legal profession and why? So when we're talking about the future, is the focus more on technology, pricing and rates, service delivery, or on answering the need for more regulatory compliance, etc.? So for those that are just joining, we're looking at the future of the legal profession, taking your cultural and jurisdictions account. Do you foresee a change to the legal profession and why? All right, it'd be very interesting to see these results. What's going to be driving change? Okay, 69% citing technology, 77% look on pricing, no surprise, that's been tied what we were saying earlier, 46% on service delivery. Now, I'd very much like to hear from Chandra Mohan from Singapore, since Singapore is usually at the forefront of innovative thinking, like the Techcelerate program. So I'd really like your thoughts on the future, please, Chandra Mohan.
Thanks, Jose. Can you hear me?
Maybe a little louder, please. Thanks.
Okay. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. I take this billing rates because I think that is something that has been happening for quite a while. It's very difficult to charge out on hourly rates, and clients expect to get a lot more value for what we charge out. So that has been a big problem in our jurisdiction. And what we also see is that there's becoming a commoditization of the low-end work. So in Singapore, the big law firms are all doing really quite fairly well. In fact, most law firms, the bigger law firms, have done well this year. They've all kept their budgets. The smaller ones are suffering because it's the lower-end work which is becoming commoditized. The Ministry of Law is requiring the lower end work to be fixed to very, very low party and party costs or fixed costs. So you see a dichotomy between big law firms doing high-end work and being able to charge, and the small, medium firms which are going to have a major problem coming up in the future. Of course, technology is also becoming a big driver at our end. All the law firms have been given budgets by the government. They've been given funding by the government. We were given quite a huge sum of money to both move into technology and at the same time to look at how we can move into regional and international markets. So that has become a very important focus by the Singapore government for the biggest law firms here, and they're funding it as well as part of the government's growth plans.
Thank you very much for that. Can I ask Dr. Yoon to provide a Korean perspective, please? And what was your choice as well?
Thank you. Yes, I think that what Sandra has mentioned in Singapore are similar to Korea. The hourly rates would be under, I think, enormous challenge by the client. Client has undergone heavy distress and high rise of costs and low and decrease of its profits. So they wanted to share such a burden with the lawyers, and they always think about the value that lawyer is creating. So they just want to tie in what they pay by what they served. So on many occasions, we are asked to provide them with an alternative measure, such as a hybrid measure where the lawyers are charging on an hourly rates, but at the same time, a certain type of incentives fee arrangement would be also inserted in the services, so that the lawyer would share the risks and burdens with the client. So I guess that as long as we can provide a value-added services, probably we are okay. But if you cannot prove such a high-value services, then probably the conventional hourly rate will be, I guess, diminished. Secondly, technology will play a big role, because it will take away some routine work from lawyers. So if works are all commoditized, probably law firms may not be able to justify their high rate in the charges. Thirdly, I would like to add the heightened regulations from the government, because government tries to make a lot of regulations these days stemming from the pandemic, but at the same time try to regulate all kinds of services sectors. So I think that the lawyers are not different. Secondly, I think that Bar Council, Lawyer Society is also doing some type of a voluntary code of conduct and making a lot of guidelines and so forth, so that the lawyers are under such restrictions because of the Bar Council. I guess that all these will change our practice. So I guess that in combination, probably in the future, lawyers need to make an innovation due to the challenges from the market as well as in the society and the government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's interesting to see that the driving change on the fee side is not just happening from the market, but it's coming from a government level in the Far East, certainly with code of conduct, with guidelines. That's very interesting as well. I think, would anyone like to add anything to that question, or surprised by any of the results seen in the poll? Okay, well, I think we'll move on then to the next question. So, bearing all this change in mind, do you think the traditional law firm business model is here to stay, or will a new model emerge? So we're talking about the pressure on commoditized work, on fee rates. What does all this mean for us? Do you think the traditional law firm business model is here to stay, or a new model will emerge? And what will this look like? Are we seeing more automation, the disappearing of those junior level roles, or business as usual? All right, the results should be appearing shortly. Be interesting to take your thoughts. Here we go. 54%, the law firm model is here to stay. 60% new, smaller size, tech-focused law firms will emerge, perhaps in response to that commoditized work we're talking about. Interesting, only 23% see a shift to Big Four consultancy type model, which is interesting. So I think I might ask James to comment on this. Be interesting to get your thoughts.
I'm a bit slow on unmuting. So I tick the box for, and some of you might be surprised because you'll have heard me speak about this in fora in years gone by. I tick the box for the continuation of the traditional law firm model. And that is largely reflective of what's been happening in my jurisdiction over the past 24 months in particular, but which has accelerated with the pandemic. And in summary, that is a flight to quality. So yes, we've had the forces that other participants in the forum have identified in terms of commoditization, the rise of technology, the use of AI, pricing difficulties, increased regulation, etc. All of that's already occurred in our jurisdiction. And so there's been some settling. And as a consequence of the settling, I think it's become clearer, in particular over the past 12 months, it's really accelerated, that there is a flight to quality, and consequent upon that flight to quality, some of the pressures which are more identifiable, such as pricing pressures, etc., and which I think firms feel in that first point of engagement where the power of the client becomes dominant, have fallen away to some extent. And what we've also experienced is that the middle market has come under enormous pressure because of the commoditisation being reflected in different ways of doing work, especially through AI. So that middle market has come under pressure. And we've also seen a couple of our competitors, but one in particular, I won't name them because I don't want to disparage them, but one of our competitors in particular embarked upon a very aggressive process of mopping up tech companies, for example, AI companies, which became part of the service offering with a very deliberate strategy of trying to take on the big four accounting firms with a consultancy arm. And that was extraordinarily expensive and has failed. And if you just think about the pure economic forces at play, it's obvious why it would fail. I'm talking about a law firm with a revenue base of 550 to 600 million Australian dollars, attempting to take on an organisation such as a Deloitte, which I think had revenue of 3.5 billion in Australia. And that's the smallest of the four accounting firms here. So, you know, the economies of scale are just enormously different. And what in fact has occurred is that the Big Four has fought back very aggressively and very successfully, and has pulled the rug out from underneath that firm's investment. So that's why I think the traditional law firm, at least in my jurisdiction, is going to be the model of the future. It's not to say it will remain static, it won't. It will change enormously in all sorts of ways. But the role of lawyer as trusted advisor, providing advice to client, flight to quality, I think is the new paradigm that will mark us apart from our competitors and drives our market.
Thanks, James. Flight to quality, key theme there. Can I bring Carl to bring a French perspective, co-managing partner at John Ted, please?
Yeah, thank you very much for letting me share my view on that. I fully agree that the traditional lawyer will survive, even though a lot of consultants have said that it's the end of our profession. However, I think a new challenge may come from the smaller firms, and not necessarily smaller technology or tech size firms, but small boutique entities. And if you look at us, the way we have been working now for almost eight months from home remotely, we get easily on the phone together with other teams, with other law firms, foreign law firms, but we could also very easily get on the phone with other small boutique firms in our country. What I want to say with that is, in these days, it does no more count if all these lawyers are sitting in the same building, because anyway, they are no more sitting in one building. They are all working at different places, and from these places very remotely. So my fear is that lawyers, either partners or senior lawyers, decide to set up their own practice together with other friends and work on a project by project way together. People who have been well trained in firms like ours, in full service firms, yeah, but who manage then to offer to their clients very tailored teams and be also quite competitive on the pricing side. Even though in France, we don't feel such a pressure on our hourly rates, which compared to certain other jurisdictions are relatively high. So we are still happy to be able to sell these rates. But on the other side, if a client manages to get an offer from a team that is composed even by different boutique firms, I think this could be attractive. And I fear that competition could come from that side. Not that much from the auditors. I absolutely agree that they do not work, or for the time being they do not manage to be on transactions as we are due to difference of quality and recruitments that they have done, except for one area, which is compliance. In compliance, perhaps also it's perhaps also a financial issue because they have more technology and more access to certain IT tools that we do not have. But in our French market, on huge compliance files, they have a strong competitive advantage. But anyway, I think there is still place for law firms like us, yeah. But we will feel and get competition coming from places we did not think that they could compete with us that quickly.
Thank you very much, Carl. Dr. Yun, anything you'd perhaps like to add in terms of the structure of the law firm of the future?
Yes, as we observed earlier, that not many law firms will really downsize, despite the fact that many people stay at home. So, we have a situation where the offices are just staying in idle and empty, whereas people are staying at home. In the meantime, for the new ventures, just recently started law firm, may have drastically different approaches. I've learned recently that the new firm, which just started last year, had adopted a policy that they have certain type of a shared space, shared office. So the lawyers are not given an individual office. They just modeled at the WeWork style office. The lawyers come and they can stay in any kind of a wider big offices, kind of a common room, and they just sit together. And they cut the enormous amount of costs, and the only one office manager is handling the lawyers' itinerary schedules and so forth. So the secretaries are just omitted, and because of that, they made a huge amount of cost competitiveness, and they made a lot of, so to speak, undercutting the bid price in the bidding context. So it becomes a disruptive kind of market player. I guess that it will put some burden on the existing law firms. I think that certainly it will make some changes in the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chandra, would you like to add anything to that?
Actually, listening to the points, I agree. In Singapore, I think the big law firms are here to stay. The big four accounting firms have not really challenged the local market. They have set up small satellite offices, but they are focusing on extremely niche work that is ancillary to what they are already doing. They continue to work with us on all the big projects. So for example, when we have major insolvencies in Singapore, we act as counsel, and the accounting firms act as either the judicial manager or the liquidator. So there's a very good working relationship, and I think they don't want to jeopardize that as well. But moving forward, I tend to agree that the working space is not utilized. So we, by law, can only have 50% in our offices now, right? And that's the maximum. In our firm, we have not mandated people to come back. So we've given them an option of you can either work at home or you can come back to the office. And so I go in every day and I see maybe about 10-15%. So we moved into new offices last October, and our meeting rooms are empty. Our lawyers' office spaces are empty. And what we've started doing is that we've started converting some of the meeting rooms into virtual courtrooms because our court hearings are now going via Zoom. The Court of Appeal hearings are via Zoom, arbitration hearings are going via Zoom. So we've started converting some of our office space into court working spaces. We've set up some rooms, we've soundproofed some meeting rooms into Zoom rooms where we can collaborate with clients from different places, transcription services, everything in one room. So we are remodeling our offices, and we think that that is the way the law firms will change in the Singapore context.
Thank you very much, Chandra. Very interesting to hear talk of, Dr. Yuen mentioned Google-style working for lawyers who are traditionally creatures of habit. So very interesting to hear perhaps an answer to the earlier question about what would the redesign of the office look like. With that, let's move on to our final open dialogue question, which is, what are the major opportunities for law firms in the future? We've touched upon it to some extent, talking about growth in compliance, regulation, etc. But what are the major opportunities for law firms in the future? This is an open question. We'd like to hear as many views as possible. Perhaps I can ask Thierry to kick us off on that question. What are the major opportunities for law firms in the future? Thank you, Thierry.
Well, I believe also, and it's a bit the same, well, referring to the previous question with respect to the Big Four, and also maybe to answer for Carl for the boutique firms. Indeed, the Big Four, I think we don't have to copy them, that's for sure. And I'm convinced that we will certainly have a place in the market, because what we have to do is different from what they are doing and what they are trying to do. For instance, litigation as a result of the regulations, as a result of a lot of compliance, there will be also a lot of litigation. Restructuring, this is very typical work for law firms, we believe. So there we believe that there will be a good future. But what is very important for us, and that's what we believe, is that the size of our firm should allow us to be very flexible. And that's normally law firms have sometimes they're very archaic and very strong. They have very strong departments, but it's internal collaboration is always a difficulty. And partners have big clients, and it's difficult to share clients with each other. And we believe that this is one of our priorities, that we have to make sure that we create teams depending on the sector. So if the sector evaluates, we have that to change the team and to make the team working, be specialized in a specific sector. Like for us, very important is the fund industry, private equity, real estate. These are our high top priorities. Well, then we have to build a team around real estate. That's what we are working on the fund sector and so on, and with specialities of the different fields of expertise. And therefore, internal collaboration will be one of the big challenges that we believe. And that's why talking about change maybe in the redesigning of the firm and the offices, that's what we try to do, is to have in one office, not a big pool, because that doesn't work. We tried that doesn't work. But to have offices with 2 or 3 persons, and then 2 or 3 persons of a different practice area, so that they can share a knowledge and so that they can learn from each other. So we believe that's very important for the near future to move on.
Thank you very much, Thierry. Vittorio, would you agree with that or add anything to that?
Let me say that I do think that this is quite a unique opportunity to actually rethink about law firms in the future for the reasons we just mentioned. We are in a situation where we have to invest on technology and on quality of the people. The technology will be essential in order to cope with the commoditized work and also with the low-level work, because we will be able to service clients in these sectors for much lower amounts and to survive competition in this sector. The top education and top formation will be able to cope with the top-end work, which we will continue to be able to sell at very substantial rates. But this also will cause a completely rethinking of our model from the point of view of the number of people in the firm, because we will not be anymore a triangle with a very large base and a very narrow top, but the shape will actually, the triangle will actually shrink, which a much lesser number of people on the basis of our triangle. And these people most likely will also need to have some technological skill, because they will need to be able to use the software for their commoditized work. Naturally, as a consequence of this, also the shape of our own buildings will need to change. There will be smaller offices with more teams room or clients room for when occasionally it is needed a physical meeting, much less rooms for professionals. Professionals will need to book when they get into the office. And I guess that the ratio of one physical space out of 2 or 3 professionals in the future will be pretty normal. So this is quite a big turning point for starting this kind of reorganization, which will take some years, but that's for sure the way where we need to go.
Thank you very much, Vittorio. Taking on that question of the new type of skills and bringing new people into the law firm, whether that's operational experts, consultancy, or tech experts. Carl, could you comment on that? Are you envisaging bringing in new types of people into your organization, changing the mix of that pyramid that was referred to?
Yeah, so we have done that. So we have support lawyers, we have increased paralegals, project lawyers who assist lawyers on their daily work. And I fully agree with one of my colleagues who indicated that financially they are very efficient and contribute to the profitability of the firm. So that's clearly something that is done. And on top of this, yeah, there are new practice areas on which we will focus more than in the past due to the economy. So financing was already indicated. Restructuring is very important. We see huge trends or huge operations in this area and huge needs in terms of support. So there are areas that are enforced, and I fully also agree that our clients are requesting more senior lawyers to be on board and don't want to see these junior lawyers and definitely are not willing to pay for them. So smaller teams, closer to the clients. I think that's one of the huge advantages of this pandemic and COVID is that it brings us closer to our clients. Even though we don't go for lunch with them, we don't meet in our in spaces, but we virtually are much closer than we used to be. Yeah, having such a video conference with a client early in the morning, late at night, and including the weekend, because that has also dramatically changed. Yeah, clients don't expect us to travel, which is the truth. Yeah, they expect us to work 24 hours, which is also the truth. And clients, this isn't new, tend to more and more call us late during the night and fix calls over the weekend, even if there's not a closing on a Monday morning. Yeah, so this has changed, and if you manage to keep a good relation to your clients, I think it brings us closer. So there are a lot of changes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Carl. Roddy, would you like to add anything on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think we obviously are sitting in an emerging market which is changing rapidly, and we're currently going through a process which I think many of my colleagues on the call have already been through in their countries, which is the internationalization of our market. So as we sit now, we of the top tier firms, we are now the only independent firm left, and all our competitors are tied up either with an international firm out of London or out of South Africa. So what that's meant for us is really us thinking about how we differentiate ourselves from those competitors. So I'd be interested in others' views as to how they've dealt with that particular issue. But I think the one trend that we've seen because of that and it's kind of interesting that all our competitors are now pitching their fee rates at much lower levels than ours. And we're now seen as the most expensive law firm in the region, which we've maintained, and we haven't tried to compete at that lower level while these other firms fight it out at a low-balling level. And I guess that how we've reacted to that is, and this comes back to your question about where we see new areas, is to become more specialized and to focus on new areas that we think are going to grow. Although restructuring for instance, many of the European colleagues on this call is not a new thing. In our market, it is new, and so we're investing in a completely new multidisciplinary restructuring practice. We're investing in a forensics and investigations practice. We're investing in a cybersecurity practice. Tax disputes, as Julian mentioned, is now a huge area for us regionally. So we're using what is happening in our market to really kind of redesign the firm and how we present ourselves. And I guess that picking up on the point that James was talking about, the flight to quality, we really want to position ourselves as the firm that only does the highly complex, cross-border, high value, and by high value, I mean high value to the clients, not necessarily financial value, work, really to set ourselves apart from both our competitors, but also the Big Four offering, which I would echo the comments that others have made about it being really focused on the broader kind of compliance issues, operational issues, middle market issues, which we're trying to now move out of.
Thank you very much, Roddy. Would anyone like a very final brief comment on anything anyone else has talked about? If you want to raise your hand. Okay, I think we've covered key issues, key growth areas. I'd now like to hand over to Samer. Thank you very much for your contributions. To Samer for his closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hussein, once again for moderating the session for us. Very, very interesting conversation, and I must say that I've personally enjoyed everything of what was said and shared. Lots of takeaways, and probably we need another session to summarize the takeaways. But just a couple of points to recap. I mentioned or I queried at the beginning whether there are jurisdictional or cultural consideration that needs to be taken into account, and clearly from the answers today that yes, there are cultural and jurisdictional considerations that varies from one place to the other. But having said that, law firms seem to have lots of common, and this is evident from the answers to our questions today. What I am very, very pleased to see that we all seem to agree that the sky is not falling. And COVID did not mark the end of our legal profession. Law firms are there to stay. And this is a very pleasing outcome, and it's very actually also aligned with the way we think. Yes, there are challenges in front of us, and yes, there are changes that are required. And it might be true that it's to a certain degree reactive to COVID, but some of which, in fact, it didn't need a pandemic for us to think of better ways of operating to achieve efficiency and productivity. We talked about the remote working in the context of being more efficient in the way we do things, not necessarily cost cutting. We talked about redesigning our offices, and I've heard some interesting thoughts in there. What Vittorio mentioned about more meeting rooms and what we call it in the new design of our offices, and we are actually moving offices next year is what we call it collaboration zones, to ensure that the team is more engaged and active in their discussion. We've also talked about the client expectation and the need to be more creative in our fee solutions and our also service delivery through the use of technology and the need for investment in technology. And we mostly seem to agree on the need for training and development of our respective teams. And there was a very interesting point that Terry had mentioned, which we are actively doing now. That's the training and development of our partners. We always think of training and development of our associates, but what we miss to focus on is the training of our partners, because it's a top-down approach. If you get the buy-in from the top, this is how you actually change the culture. This is the culture transformation that we're going through now. And it's so pleasing also to hear that we are proactively thinking of ways to improve our legal profession rather than being reactive to the threats of the disruptors, which again, we seem to agree that they're not there to take our profession away, and it will not be an easy ride for them to compete with us. Quality would continue to play on our side, and this is where our focus should be, rather than react to those threats in the market. And on the last note, I'm also very pleased to hear that you all seem to agree that there are opportunities out there, and that had, as I said, had an eye-opener effect on us, and had made us see those opportunities that worth exploring now. And there is a positive vibe in terms of the way we look at our future and the potential growth that we foresee in the next few months or years. And I would leave it there. I'm very mindful of the time, and I'll hand over now to Essam for his closing remarks.
I'm really very pleased that we have managed to hold this event. I'm really glad that you took the time out of your busy schedule on this challenging time to be on the screen, and I hope we continue our relationship. I would like to thank Hussein and Samer for organizing this, and for Hussein for managing this process in such a very professional, efficient manner. And there are certain issues we all into the learning process, and we continue to learn, and this is the beauty of this profession. But also, I think COVID-19 has shaken countries and shaking states and law firms, and it's in some way, at least in my experience, I haven't seen it in the past, and in some way it's a wake-up call. I cannot hide from you, gentlemen. I was extremely nervous in March, April. I didn't know whether I came to the office one day to follow up on things, and the office was depressing. It is quiet, it's dark, nobody there, and I got really bit scared, especially with our presence in a number of countries. We have 17 offices in 9 countries, and I was worried what's going to happen in each and every office. Luckily, we did very well, and our clients needed us, and we have invested in our relationship. However, as I said in my talk a few minutes ago, we were trading on the past relationship, but that's not guaranteed that these things going to continue with our existing clients. Pricing is a big issue for us. So we're hoping, and I'm hoping, and I'm working very closely with our team and partners and Samer, and it's almost a daily discussion with Samer, and we have an official weekly meeting to discuss issues like this. it's very important. We need to find a ways to price ourselves differently. It's extremely important that we look at our pricing, and I think the way in which we charge clients. Otherwise, those professions who comes from an accounting firms, or those people who are investing in artificial intelligence, and those new young lawyers who are going to become the lawyer of the future, who are today 20 and 21 years old, used to a different technology, different agility, gonna beat us. This is not a theory, this is a fact. Clients today, and this is very important, talent. Client today is not looking for 10 pages advice on article this or article that. Clients looking for solutions. Clients comes to us, they want solution. They want basically the end result. And I think unless we change our way of working with the client to provide them an end result, and we become a commercially minded and get away even further from the classic traditional way of providing an advice and charging for it, and continue of repeating ourselves and cut and paste on some of our advices, I think it will be challenges. There is also, and this is extremely important, we need to get used to, and this is not easy, but we need to be very, very tough with ourselves and our colleagues. There's area of practice that we need to walk away from, and there's a new area of practice we need to invest talent in. And unless we do this, we're not going to be, as Samer says, the Google or Amazon of the future. You're going to become General Electric of the past. And that's very, very important agility that we have to do and works within ourselves with them. Is it easy? No, it's not easy, because we as an individual need to change. We need to persuade our partners, and we need to basically be a little bit forceful of some of our action and some of our decisions. And that's not easy. It also requires an investments, and again, investments for the second time in our IT system, in our offices, in our way in which we work with the clients. And we will definitely, as any investments we have made in the past, not every decision we made is going to work. Not every investment we're going to have a good return for, as any investments in this world. However, it's evidence from what I've seen and read now, and from what I basically foresee for the future, that COVID is going to go away. And we're going to go back to normal. And God gave us a beautiful gift as a human, that we have a short memory of things. And we're going to go back to doing our own old things. And that's the disastrous if we're going to do it. If we're going to go back and doing the old things that we got used to it. So unless we change, I'm certain that other small law firms will take it over, and other law firms who are in the service industries today and investing in the legal services and technology company, gonna take some of our business away from us. And we need to ensure that we bring those young people into our firm, we bring those IT people into our firm, and things. And I'll tell you something that's very interesting. I bought a Tesla about a couple of years ago, and I was asking the guy who's hand me the Tesla a question, that's how many mechanics that they have in their and how he told me, we don't have any mechanics in our Tesla. We have IT experts, because we don't need mechanics. The company doesn't have an engine. So we need to stop hiring mechanics, and we need to start hiring IT experts, because the future is shifting on us. And I really encourage that we exchange ideas among ourselves. We are very proud of our relationship. If anything, we need probably to remind ourselves, and let's find a way of reminding ourselves how we could work closely with each other and we strategize with each other and send each other clients here and there. The good news, Dubai actually almost back to normal, and the governments and the leadership here has done a wonderful job in opening up the city, but at the same time managing the health of the people who lives, residents and the local here in a wonderful way. That's made us very proud of the country we're living in, where they have actually stabilized the process of COVID-19, and as the health infrastructure works perfectly, and they're actually in surplus, they're not under stress, and the economy is back into normal. And as I said, I'm going to address the elephant in the room also. The relationship with Israel seems to have opened some prospect and brought up a better mood to the city. So there's always a good opportunities here in the region, and we're hoping that we could continue to find ways of working with each other. And I'm finished, so I look forward if anybody want to have remarks before we close, or I'll hand the screen to Hussein or Samer or Barbara.
Thank you very much, Sam, for your closing remarks, which I think are very encouraging. And thank you everyone for attending this session. As said before, we've recorded the session, so we'll send you the recording afterwards, and we will create a report that we can share with you with all these useful findings. So wishing you a very good evening, day, or even morning, and hope to see you all very soon.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam.